another episode of Chai Time. I am your host Alina and I'm here today with Adnan. Adnan is also the CEO of our company Opus AI. So Adnan, it's really great to have you with us today and that you're joining us for Chai Time today.
Happy to be here.
Okay. So in Chai Time, we have really interesting conversations that are related to AI and the world of tech. So today we're back with another interesting topic, which is social media and AI. Is AI really reinforcing the echo chambers and filter bubbles? Let's find out today. So without further ado, let's just dive right into the topic. So, Adnan, as a person who has been in this industry for quite a while now and who has insights from the tech world, could you please define for us what these echo chambers really are and how do they create these filter bubbles and how do they indirectly impact our online discourse?
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic and it's very interesting. Everybody knows, right? It's not some secret. It's not something that is hidden for most people because you go to a friend and you look at their feed, and that is very different than what you see. And if you go to a different country, even your feed significantly changes, right? If you're on Meta, if you're on Twitter, anywhere, things change very drastically, and it's hard to decipher in many cases what exactly is happening, right? The suspicion that most people have is the feeds or the content that we see is somehow there to please us or somehow there to reinforce our beliefs. But is it actually true? Is it what the um, matter of fact is, or is it something quite different, right? So let's think about it a little bit, and then we'll talk about concretely what exactly happens, right? So let's imagine that we're running a fictional media company, like social media company, and our business aim is what exactly, right? Is it actually to please people? Is it actually to make them feel content? Is it actually to make them feel that everybody likes what they, or is it something different, right? As a social media company, and initially social media companies, when they started back in 90, and that was the initial, right? People were trying different things until these megalith companies emerged out of the ashes of so many um, companies that crushed. And initially, yes, that was the aim, right? You would see all sort of weird personalized widgets. You would see all sort of um, content that would be very something that you're likely to enjoy, right? And that was the initial idea because thinking on surface, we will always think that, oh, I like this thing, and if there's more of it, then I'm gonna something is gonna be, I'm likely to use that social network more. But on the business side, the fact is that that's not quite true, right? Looking at a like content, first of all, makes you bored, right? It's not this just like, if you hear praise from too many people, and it's kind of the same, you're gonna, maybe secretly be pleased, but it's also gonna lead to you to tune out, um, stop listening with, right? And it's not specifically that we do intentionally, it's just simply how our brain works. We filter out things that is being said too many times. So from a social media company, what is our business aim? Is it to make you like things? Not quite, right? The actual business aim is to drive engagement. The more people who are engaging with the content leads to what? You're selling ads, right? All social media company, that's their actual real product, selling ads, and you are not the user, you are actually um, the target, right? and in their benefit. And we've seen that initially, at least, some social media companies really push the limit, where you would go to a social website and you would see like almost half the page filled with ads. And those were traditional ads, your banners, your display ads, your text ad, all sort of things, right? And you still see it in some of the very old school sites. If you go there, you'll see it, and you kind of feel like, oh, this is very old, right? Now the new strategy is, of course, not that, right? And we're almost aware of that. The new strategy is to make ads close to invisible, right? That you, of course, due to legal obligations and other ethical obligations, you do have to mark ads as that you're getting paid to show it, but you want to make it as transparent and as invisible that in most cases you don't even notice that you're seeing an ad, right? So business goal is for you to interact with posts, and the more posts you interact with, the more likely that you're going to interact with an ad. And the second you interact with an ad, you're driving, you're giving money in one way or the other to the social media company, right? So that's the overall aim. Now, will creating an echo chamber drive engagement? And the answer is no, it does not actually, at least not the kind of echo chamber that you would think, right? There is a filter bubble, there is an echo chamber, but it's not the kind that we would normally think it is, right? It's actually, and one term that became very popular in the last 2 3 years is gaslighting, right? And I wouldn't say that it's specifically gaslighting, but it is something very close to it, right? The idea is to put you in a hyper mode all the time when you're interacting with the social media, kind of like a constant dopamine hit that constantly going through your brain over and over and over and over and over.
Yes.
With the second you look away, that rush stops, and you um, almost have this addiction, like you want to look back, right? If you don't have anything more interesting going on in your life, you're likely gonna want to look back, even when you know that it's not good for you, right? It's
Like
good for your
withdrawal
health.
symptoms. Yeah.
Right, right. So that's the aim that the social media companies have, right? And that's just the surface, right? I'll give the stage back to you so you can ask more questions before I dive more in.
Yeah, sure. So before I ask the next question, I would like people to write their questions in the chat box so we can answer them as well, and make sure that the questions are relevant to the discussion that we're having today. So yes, you guys can just ask the questions. So my next question is, how do you think that these, echo chambers, how do they impact a person's perception of reality and the truth?
Um, so and most of the people who are hyper engaged on social, and some of them, of course, have been on social for more than since the beginning, right? Like really, I would say senior citizen of social, they are very good at it, right?
Yes.
And they take it more as a almost like their own blood circulation, so it doesn't impact them as much. But for the young people, what we see is, of course, the dopamine hit kind of makes them addicted to it, right? They have to keep on scrolling, like right, left, up, down, like keep on to the next post and the next post and the next post and the next post until they find something that they want to like or engage with. And that's a normal thing. Another thing psychologically that happens is that you feel almost that withdrawal the second you start looking away, right? You want to go back to that even when you're not actually enjoying it in the traditional sense, but you're addicted to it. Like you think of it as like almost like a abusive relationship, right? And that's the actual goal of a, so that's the you wouldn't think that, but that's actually the ideal user that the social media companies want. Because when you're in an abusive relationship, you are very easy to get triggered, right? And incidentally, abusers know how to trigger you, right? That's the secret of being a good abuser, that you know how to trigger a person and make them do the things that you want them to. It's not a happy relationship, but it is a relationship. And if you're addicted to it, one way or the other, you're easy to manipulate into clicking and opening and interacting with the things that they want you to interact with, right? Just they're showing you something that you're like, makes you happy, and then suddenly you see something like, that is completely going against your belief, and it's completely triggering you, and you're angry, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna make this really nasty comment, and you open it up and you write this nasty comment and you post it, and you don't get any satisfaction because nobody has instantly responded to this, and like, you can't engage in that heated conversation then, so you're gonna try to find more of that kind of thing. So I want to find something where people are actually so this happens, and that's again like, it's the ideal state of mind that a social media company would have. So it's to a direct answer to your question is making people more agitated, almost in a constant agitated state, right? Where they want to constantly chatter about what they're seeing or interacting with on a social media, even when it has no relation to their real life, their actual problems or anything.
Okay, so while talking about these keyboard warriors, we are saying that social media is basically, we might think we have a very personalized feed, but it's in the end we are being manipulated by the social media and AI.
Yeah, it is a personalized field. That part is accurate. It's just not personalized to your likeness. It's just personalized to turn you into a clicking. So somebody, they that can be triggered easily, right? That's the goal.
Yes. So, where do you think AI comes in into creating these filter bubbles? Like we might think something we're seeing on social media is something that, oh, okay, that's very unique, but in the end we're seeing something that we actually want to see, and we're seeing more of it. So, how does AI come in creating these filter bubbles?
AI is good at many things, right? One thing that is really good at is, I mean, that's what basically what AI is, right? That's the core strength of AI is prediction, right? Making predictions and assigning some kind of percentage to it, some kind of weightage to it. How likely is it to do what you want it to do, right? Again, we're talking about social media and personalized feeds. So, and they encourage you in the beginning, they're going to show you all sort of, different variety posts. And the reason they show you this is not because they want you to have diverse opinions or anything. But the point is that the more these posts are designed to create that instant classification of who you are, right? And it's not going to be very good in the beginning because it's going to give some kind of very shallow opinion of what you are. But the point is that the second that process starts, um, you are constantly being classified, right? Every single second you interact with anything, even when you're not doing anything, just scrolling, you stop for 1 second too late, you pause over a single video that is auto playing. You're not directly interacting with it, but the instant you do that, there's an event that is kicking back, going back to the server, and server saying, "Oh, this video is something that the user, spent more time than usual, right? It's like probably half a second more than the other videos, but it means that, oh, it's something that is likely to um, he likely to interact with if we show more of it, like, so they're constantly trying to get to that place where they can show you the exact thing that you would interact with, right? And of course the end goal is ads, but that's where AI comes in. Prediction, it's always predicting, and it's never sleeping, right? The second you open it up, any social media app, it's always classifying, like, okay, who you are, what state of mind you're in, what can we show you that you'll interact with, and then let's find from our stash of ads what is that thing that we can show you that you're likely to interact with. Yeah.
Yes, and whenever you're making even a Netflix account, Twitter account, they always show that you need to select 2 to 3 things from this,
Oh yeah.
and then they will show you what is exactly is something that you're gonna like according to it.
That's the kickstarting the AI, right? So that's the second you select something, even when you're hovering your mouse over a category and you haven't actually clicked it, it already have drive the influence, right? So it's not specifically what you clicked or selected, it's more like what you looked at, and that's the eventual aim, right? Where you're always constantly being classified, not just by the obvious thing that you think, but more even when you um, how what state of the mind you're in, what is your facial expression. We're not there yet, but that's where the game will become really crazy, right? When you're even detecting the pupil dilation to detect, like, what kind of um, feeling you have while you're taking any kind of, like, engaging with anything, right? So all of that event, that's the end goal, that where you are almost like an open book, right? The second you sit in front of a computer or look at your phone, you're being classified. And the phone, I think people have tried quite a lot of crazy things, but computers still are relatively less exploited in that manner.
Okay. And where do you think that the concept of consumerism come in? Because how do you think that these sort of echo chambers that are perpetuated by AI, how do you think that they are causing consumerism? Because sometimes you might see something on our feed and it shows us 2 to 3 times and we are, forced into buying it, some impulsive sort of buying. So how do you think that it impacts consumerism?
So from a technical standpoint, or from where I stand, or where I so if you know how the system works and what is being done, you are more likely to resist it, right? So it actually works the other way for people who, the more aware you are of what the system is doing, right? But what I've seen and it's interesting, right? Because within my extended family, I've seen the strange behavior, where people are almost letting go of their will, right? So they're saying that, oh, the AI is going to decide for what I should buy, so I shouldn't. I don't even have to decide what I need to buy, right? It's like almost like, oh, the algorithms are deciding for me, and I know that is an active narrative as well that is being pushed by the same companies, that algorithms know better than you do, right? Which is almost like, let go of your free will. You don't need to think, just let the. But that's something that we see quite a bit, where people are almost proudly saying, oh, the algorithm decided it for me. It's not actually algorithms that decided for you. What happens is that you look at something for too long, you click on something, you're engaged with something, and in advertisement industry, or like in the the funnel, you're being retargeted. The second you click on something, they sort out that, oh, you interacted with this content, okay, let's show it to you again and see what you do, right? And if you interact with it again, or do something that they take it as a positive signal, then they're going to actively retarget you, which basically means that everywhere you go, everything you see, you're going to see the same ad, right?
Yes.
Because most of the ads are now driven by the same channels, which mean that they know everywhere you are. And the aim is, of course, that you walk into a mall and you see in the shopping window, you see the same ad, and that way you just think that there's nothing else in the world, right? But yeah, that's what happened, right? It's not actually the algorithm, it's actually retargeting.
Yes, I believe that when we're watching certain ads and we go for it and like a certain sort of product and we see it on Facebook, on all the socials, we are somehow convinced to, buying it in the end. And I think so their end target is goal is achieved, I guess, the companies. And now moving on to the next question that I had in the political discourse, how do you think that this sort of echo chambers they impact a person's political opinion or impact anybody's political discourse as well?
It's a so I would say that it does kind of the same thing, but slightly, I would say. So here's how I would think about politics. Like an irrational person thinks about politics in a specific ways. Let's say that to you, what is politics, right? As a person who's living, let's say, somewhere in suburban area, with your family, and so you're gonna look at the problems that you face, right? Your roads are broken, or your utilities are not the top notch, or you're not getting enough internet speed, or so on and on. Like your police is not maybe taking action fast enough, etc., etc. Right? These are the concern of a normal person, right, who hasn't been influenced by, let's say, political retargeting, as I would call it. Now, um, one thing that and we're seeing this, like in the last 6 7 years, we have seen this, like gotten to almost um, magnitude higher, and I can't assign a um, real number to it, but let's say that anywhere from 100x to probably even more, it has increased, which is where you're being manipulated into buying into issues that in most cases either are completely fictional or have no um, real effect or implication to your or your immediate circle's life, right? That's what we're seeing, right? And in the US, let's say, and what happens is that gets replayed so much throughout the social media, but also through the traditional media, that you lose touch with reality, right? You no longer even are aware of why you're voting for somebody, for what reason, right? You're like almost like permanently in that agitated state where you just care about the issues that are not relevant to you, right? They may not even be real, and that's something that used to happen in all. That's part of, like general politics, right? It's not something new. It always happened. That's how politics works, right? Yeah, some issues are relevant, and a lot of issues are has no relevance, and in most cases the job of the politicians is to balance out, right? Because they want to keep their voters happy to some extent, not too happy, because if they're too happy, then they can stop caring about politics altogether. But to some extent, content that okay, politicians are doing something for them, and incidentally, to make their actual donors or funders happy, right? That's basically your corporate, your elites, right? And they are the one who actually fund them. Now, what has happened now is that um, people are being manipulated into thinking that there are issues that may exist or may not even exist, and if they exist, they're not relevant to you, but it's you they're just being, like constantly retargeted. So that's something that we see out, getting very out of touch with reality, where you're constantly talking about or thinking about issues that are not relevant. So yeah.
Okay. And in the future, how do you think that what sort of, how would this sort of these echo chambers evolve in the future? And what sort of implication could this have for society? Like, for example, people might not have, tolerance with difference of opinion and etc. So how do you think that will happen?
um, so it's very hard to predict, right? What happens is that, so there are two or three things that are happening, and all of these things are leading to some sort of discourse taking place. Some part of that discourse is, of course, part of the game, already pre-planned and intermixed with the existing game to make it look like that. But there is some real discourse as well, where um, people are um, using the same system almost to um, get the kind of agreement on things, or increase the magnitude of the discourse to a proportion that is not part of the plan, right? The plan that, let's say your politics or your corporates have, right? And it's interesting to see, right? I think what if I know anything about human psyche, and what I've seen, I would say that technology is going to be massively used in both sides, which means that, of course, like, people who want to keep the status quo always use technology, and they always have used technology, and they're going to continue to use it and probably double down on it, which means that we're going to see a lot more fictional content. We're going to see a lot more. Um, Generated content and the kind of content that may or may not even exist, right? Disinformation, misinformation, malinformation, all that stuff is going to happen. But we're also going to see technology being used by people who don't want the status quo. So that's, I think, the next almost phase that's going to happen, right? And um, who will win in that? I don't know, like, but it's definitely not like, the game is not lost, or it's not that, it's completely over. It's just, it's interesting to see the fight or the battle shift to almost like a complete digital realm. Somewhat entertaining if you can, keep yourself disconnected or like, impartial to it. So I think we have a few questions. Do you want to take some of them?
Yes, so the latest question that we got was, even with the latest GDPR consents that Europe and West is forcing on these companies, the targeted ads are going strong. So when does this tracking stops, or do we need to cover our mics and cameras too?
You should cover your camera, frankly, and that's not a new thing. So, if you actually care about your privacy, you should always cover your camera because the light, as you're told, actually doesn't need to be on. You can be tracked, especially with the. Um, so I've worked in quite a few of these settings where I know that that's not actually a thing. Right, if you have a camera and there's a lens pointing at something, and if somebody is determined enough to look through it, they will get through. Right, it's not something fictional. It's not hyperbolic. It actually happens all the time. Right, now. Um, about GDPR, I think GDPR is more of a cover, right? It's not actually a thing that was meant to stop anything. That was more of a cover for the politicians to um, become part of the game, part of, uh, actively become part. Because what was happening is the corporate was becoming too strong. Your technology, tech companies were getting too strong, and politicians wanted um, piece of the pie, right? And that's what GDPR is about. It's not nothing to do with your privacy or your consent or anything. It has more to do with how to um, get their share out, right? And wherever you see GDPR has caused more annoyance, more disturbance. It has made things worse for every single purpose except where it counts, which is your actual privacy or security, right? The from cookie consent screen, which are completely meaningless to begin with, because nobody uses, no big tech company uses cookies, and they haven't used cookie for more than 10 15 years now, right? They can track you without the cookie, right? So that's all. It's just a cover for that, right? So they are going to go strong, and they're continue to go strong because that was never the intention, right? But that's not in the interest of politicians to stop that. Their um, interest is to become part of it, right?
Okay, so before we wrap up, Adnan, do you have any more insights for us about this topic that you might like to share?
It's a fascinating thing that is happening, right? And we see, interesting things being played, right? At some point, some people, take it for granted, especially if you're just letting you go of your will and you're saying, oh, algorithms are going to decide for me. You're probably on a different horizon or like on a different spectrum. But for anyone who's keeping their eyes open and like not specifically um, letting go of your their so more like if you're an impartial observer, then you can see all the different spectrums that are being played, right? Yes, of course there is a lot of I would say a, a lot of noise that is part of the game that is being played, but at the same time there's a lot of discourse as well, and that there are a lot of different spectrum that are um, they are taking that are part of what is happening, and we don't specifically know where it's going to go because technology is almost getting to a stage where it's hard to regulate or control, right? I mean, you can definitely always come up with some heavy-handed approach, and I think if things go too far, then politicians may try, like they're trying with the regulating the AI. But the problem with that, of course, is like we've seen in the past, that the second you try to regulate something, um, it just dies, right? Like what happened with the your um, aircraft industry, what happened with your transportation industry. So all of these things, regulation never leads to, and the problem is that it's going to be an interesting thing to see. And again, like when we talk about digital media, it's almost impossible to effectively regulate anything, right? Like we've seen the attempt to stop um, piracy, digital piracy. It didn't go anywhere, right? It just went stronger, right? And the only time we saw it slightly dying down is when um, industry came up with some compelling offering that was easier to use than the pirated content, right? And the second they increase the price, then people just go back and start pirating again, right? So that's very hard to actually enforce, right? You can always come up with a whole bunch of laws, never works. So it's interesting, right? To me, like because um, I'm not a political person, or let's say that I'm not playing that more like I'm more of a observer, and to me it's interesting how things are taking place. A lot of existing power players are using technology, but a lot of people who would not have that opportunity are using technology to gain that power almost.
Okay. So, as our episode today comes to an end, I would like to thank everybody who has joined us. Thank you so much, guys, for your questions, and we would like for you guys to tune in next week as well. And I would also like to thank Adnan for joining in and giving us your insights about this topic. And before you guys go away, please make sure to check out Opus website. Our pre-sale is live, and make sure that you guys have an amazing weekend. Bye bye, everybody.
Yeah, before we wrap up, one more thing. We are going to start the creative segment. Do you want to say something about that?
Next week, guys, we would like to invite a creator and we would ask questions and related to tech insights about that as well. So make sure that you guys tune in for that as well. Okay, everybody.
All
Uh,
right. See you next week. Bye bye.